25th of January, Rabbi Furst, Pierke Avos.
Tag, you're it, Roy.
Roy, you're going to read and you're the rabbi.
Shalom, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Roy. Good morning, Barry. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Boker Tov. Boker
Good
Tov.
morning, yeah. How's everyone doing today?
Baruch Hashem.
Hashem, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Mari.
Good morning. Okay, good morning. This is Rabbi Shlomo Furst, Yeshiva Tzamanafi here in Yerushalayim, care of Zoom. We are in our first year learning Pierke Avos. Okay, we're at the last two paragraphs of the document you should still have. I'll put it on the screen. And maybe if we finish this, maybe I'll even send out another document today. We'll see if we can or not. Okay. The last two paragraphs on your document that's the Proyon Devarim and Parshas Re'eh. Brings down this mimer. Again, we're learning the mimer of Rabbi Akiva, specifically the mention of that Maestros are a sayud la'osher. Several different explanations we've been discussing. So here we'll learn these last two commentaries, and then we'll move on to something in more depth about the Maestros, which maybe I'll send it out today. We'll see. Yeah. Who would like to read? Any volunteers?
I do.
Mike, go ahead.
Masros siag le'osher me'ha de osher. No, de aser b'shvil.
Thank you.
Asher.
You give the tithes in order that you should become wealthy.
Right. Shemitechila yoter yitain maaser v'achar kach yavo lo haosher. So initially, you give Meiser, and afterwards, wealth will come to you.
Right, that's the way. If you understand the statements, Meiser Sayag La'osher, to mean that you'll give your tithes in order that you shall become wealthy. That means at the beginning you give your Meiser, and afterwards the cause and effect, the cause of giving Meiser will lead to the effect of afterwards will come to you the wealth, right? So it's a cause and effect. Give the Meiser and become wealthy. Okay.
But then after you become wealthy, then you have to give Meiser on the wealth.
Mitzvah Goreris Mitzvah. Mitzvah Goreris Mitzvah.
Exactly. It's a cycle.
Yep.
It's only a tenth that you have to give. So you're getting 90% for yourself. That's less than mom in this country, right?
Yep.
They want 60% of your income, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
V'gam yehei osher shamor le'va'alo le'tova al yedei hamasaros. And also it is wealth guards
Shomer L'Balav, it'll be protected for its owner.
The wealth is guarded for its owner for good through the Meiser.
This is a whole different process, right? something which is different than the first process. Again, the first process was by giving the tithes, giving the maestros, a person will gain wealth. And the second process is that the wealth that a person has will be to his benefit, right, through the giving of the maestros. Through giving of the maestros, that wealth that he has will be given over to him in a good way, meaning the wealth that he has will be able to be used in ways that are beneficial for the owner.
De'im ho ilu lahasig osher mikol shekain she yo ilu lehatzilu me avdun. Okay, so that if, what is ho'ilu?
If it helps,
If it helps to hasig, I don't know either.
Siag, to protect,
well, no, hasig leads to achieve.
to achieve, okay.
They want to achieve. I mean, if giving the maestros help to achieve wealth,
then it's logical that it will help.
right?
I don't know these words. Lahatzilu.
Not silo from the hatzala, will save it, save the wealth, ma'avdom, from being lost. Meaning, the words from a kol v'chomer. I mean, if the giving of the tithes gives a person wealth, through giving the tithes, it causes a person to be wealthy, then by giving the tithes, it certainly should, even more so, be beneficial to protect what wealth he does have already.
Right. If it gives him wealth, it's going to protect the wealth he has. Aval mehach doish es kedeshav lo yi'u. But from this, that a man,
that's the pasuk in Vayikra that what's been discussed. I've discussed this pasuk, that there are those who want to apply this pasuk with the east as cuts of lo yiyu, that a person, those things which are holy, that they should be, he should, meaning they are his, but he's obligated to give those things, which is referring to the maestros, to the kohen, right? So that that if you want to apply that pasuk, it's not exactly a good proof, as I'll explain. It's not a good proof because it's not evident from that.
Eino muchach, it's not evident. Ella she'im kavar yesh lo osher, except that if he already has wealth, nishmar etzlo, it guards him al yedei ha ma'asros, through his miser. So it's only a proof that if he already has wealth, then the miser will guard the wealth.
It will preserve it. Meaning, from that pasuk of the ish es kadshav lo yeh, it's not provable anything except that if he already has existing wealth, they will be preserved through the maestros. Through the maestros, it'll preserve the existing wealth, but not that he's going to get wealthier from them.
Okay, what is it that we're talking about that only proves that he preserves his wealth?
This pasuk, Veish as kadshoy lo yiyu, the person that is what's holy to him will be to him. That's used by other meforshim to try and prove that a person will get wealthier by giving the maestros. But this is being argued, but that doesn't prove it. All it proves is that what you have will be protected, but not that you're going to gain anything. There won't be any positive gain. You may not suffer a loss, but there won't be any positive gain.
I see. Thank you.
And the wealth that's being referred to is purely monetary, or your assets, whatever they are.
Yeah, we're talking about, we'll get to this maybe later today, tomorrow maybe, that the maestros we're basically talking about, midoraisa, are really, as we saw last week, are really only grains, grapes, and olives. Those are the three products that the Torah is machayev a person to give maestros on midoraisa. All other types of products are to a certain extent the rabbanan, not the rice, including finances. So
Right. It doesn't, so what is that? How does that affect your bank account? If you get an inheritance and you pay the 10%, say, now you have this in your account, right?
right,
Now, that's not going to be affected if you don't ever give any more maestros.
right,
Account is not going to shrink, right? It seems to be only because of things that grow from the ground, the grains that this cycle works, right? Because if you get your 100 sacks of wheat and you give 10, right, and you put the 10 and you put the 90, the 90 sacks of wheat away,
right.
now, so you've done it. Now comes the next year, right? And then that's the story that's often repeated. So the next year, if you give less maestros, your crops are going to get smaller. But it doesn't affect the 90 sacks of wheat that you put away in your silo.
Right. So that the growth, right? The growth that you're going to experience obviously has to be on the future.
Right.
Yeah, but therefore.
So how are you protecting what you have? Why is it?
That's the objection. That's the objection to that shot. They object to that shot. You can't say that sayeg lemeister, meisters is sayeg leoisher. You can't say that shot that it's going to make you rich, because that doesn't make sense. Even in the conceptual formation of what we're talking about here, as I explained earlier, a fence is usually made to protect something which is inside already, something that's pre-existing, right?
Yeah.
Person has something he wants to protect, you put up a fence to protect it. So therefore, it's not necessarily accepted by all the commentaries that it's going to
Okay,
Make you rich. There is such a thing that Mises will make you rich. That's the Gemara, based on the pasuk. But that's not necessarily the pshat in Mises' Sayag La'osher. Everyone agrees that giving Mises will make you rich, right? But was that what Rabbi Akiva was referring to when he said Mises is a Sayag La'osher? That's a dispute. And he mentions also over here that the Oisher Shomer L'Ba'ala of L'Toiva, that the wealth of a person will be beneficial to the owner. Meaning, we see the opposite by Koirach. Koirach was one of the richest people, in fact, who ever lived, and certainly the most richest person in Klal Yisrael at the time. And yet, his wealth.
he found one of Paro's treasures, right? That
That's
Yosef
right.
hid away.
That's right. Right.
Yeah, and
Nevertheless-
Haman found the other one, the second one.
Could be. That's
Now,
right.
No, I know that. No, because I'm doing research on this. There was a third one that hasn't been found yet. So according to the research I've done, I know exactly where it is. It's under the Aswan Dam.
Okay.
Start digging,
Huh?
start digging.
Right. Exactly. It's under the Aswan Dam. It's inaccessible.
Okay. Well, that's why they put the dam there. That's a good idea. So, but Korach, nevertheless, he was rich, but his wealth was not to his benefit. Because he was so wealthy, it caused him to err and fail in many different ways. So that's a case where a person's wealth did not serve their owner well. If a person gives maestros, then it's a guarantee that his wealth will serve him in a proper, positive way. Okay, let's continue.
Masaros Siag Laosher Al Yidei Mamono V'Osher Efshar Sheyichta Ha'adam. Tithing is a fence of wealth through his money, and he tithes. His tithing it's possible through tithing. It's possible that he could sin. Sheyichta, is that to sin?
Yeah, I did mammon, but no, it's he's saying are you the mamona, meaning not giving them tithes, but through person's money and his wealth, it's possible that a person could sin through his money and his wealth.
Ah, okay. Sheyiga lavo b'masro la'amur. What is sheyiga?
He'll become prideful from gaiva. Sheyiga libo. His heart will become haughty. Right, his heart will become haughty, but oishro through his wealth will cause his heart to become haughty.
Okay. And he will say, "Li kesef, v'li hazahav." The gold and the silver is mine. V'hein kol ella yedei ashta li, and they are only my wealth. Es ha chil hazeh. What's ha chil?
these efforts. Esachal, meaning he says the gold and the silver is his. Behain call Ela Yidei Asali. They came to me through what I did through my own efforts. So a person may come to make the mistake through his wealth. His wealth actually will come, if he doesn't have the right attitude, his wealth will actually come and deceive him into thinking that the money is really his, and the efforts that he did were the cause of him being wealthy, which to a certain extent it's true. He did put forth certain efforts, but nevertheless, it's a lack of belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's decisions to make him rich. Meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the one who decided to make him rich and wealthy. And any money that he happens to have is simply his because of the decision that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made to make him wealthy. And he had to go through certain efforts in order to achieve that wealth. So he shouldn't become wealthy through what we would call miracles. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want people to do and accomplish things through miracles. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed that this person should be rich. And in order to become rich, he has to go through certain motions of accumulating wealth. So he'll be going through the motions, and by his motions, that's going to give a kiyum, a fulfillment of the decree of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If a person believes the opposite, has v'sholem, he thinks that it was his efforts that made him rich, he's making a very big mistake, and that leads to a certain haughtiness of pride, false pride, that he thinks that the money and the wealth is really his. The Sefer Chavos HaLevavos points out that the wealth that a person has is really, of all the person's assets and wealth that he actually has, only a very small percentage of that money that he owes and assets that he has acquired really belongs to him. Why? Because a person, the money that he actually needs for his own self, to clothe himself, to shelter himself, to feed himself, right? That amount of money is very minimal. All the other money that he possesses, he's simply an apitropos. He's simply a custodian for the money that it should be distributed to other people. After himself, he has to distribute money to his wife and his family. Then he has to distribute the money to good causes, right? And it's given to the person the choice how he wants to distribute that money, but that money doesn't really belong to him. He's simply a custodian, or we call he's an apitropos on that money. And it's a big mistake if people think Aliyah Kesef, Aliyah Zav. It's the money is mine and the gold is mine. It's really not. He's only a custodian for the money to direct it to go to the proper places. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is testing him to see if he's going to be spending the money and giving the money to the proper sources or not. That's the amount of wealth that a person has. It's really just his bechira to use that money in the proper way. But what is actually destined for him is a very small percentage of his actual wealth and assets. For a person, the richest person in the world, when it's all said and done after 120 years, you take the richest person in the world and you take the poorest person in the world, there's not going to be too many differences in the amount of, say, potatoes that they both ate. The richest person can eat maximum maybe a ton of potatoes in his whole lifetime, and the poorest person, he's going to ask how many potatoes he's going to eat. He's going to eat a half a ton. He didn't have a whole ton to eat. He ate a half a ton, right? how many shoes does the richest person in the world have to have? He wants to wear 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pairs of shoes every day, right? So you add it up, and in the end of the day, they'll own 1,000, 2,000 pairs of shoes during his lifetime, and the poorest person so maybe wear 10, 15, 100 pairs of shoes in his whole lifetime. So what's the big difference between the two? It's very minimal, the difference between the richest person and the poorest person. The only difference is what is available to the rich person is the bechira, the choice of using his money to benefit other people. And if he's going to benefit other people with his wealth, so then he's doing a mitzvah with it. And if he's not going to benefit with people with his wealth, then he's most likely doing averes with it. And he'll have to give a din v'cheshbon. He'll have to give an accounting and a reckoning to Kadosh Baruch Hu what he did with all his money, if it was used in the proper way or not. So that's what's so how does Maestros come into this picture now? Let's continue on, right?
Olam,
Ulam, in the middle of the
Ulam, Hamaaser, Hu Siag Laosher. Generally, tithing is a fence around wealth. Sha'al Yedei Nakal Lo Zachor Es Lashem Haaretz. That through what is Nakal?
It's easy. Sha'al Yedei Ayado, through the giving of the maestros, through the giving of the maestros, it becomes easy.
It becomes easy for him to remember that the land belongs to Hashem. The rock Shekir Shana Hu Yoshev Beknis Niv V'notar Shekaro V'holech. That only Kishakir, I don't know.
He's Rak Kisachir. He's like a Shana. He's like a yearly renter. He's like a really, meaning the land really belongs to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he, by giving the tithes, the maestros, he views himself as being simply like a renter, right?
And he's dwelling in his acquisitions.
Right. Who Yoshev Bikinyan. I mean, he's dwelling. The person is dwelling in what really belongs to Kadosh Baruch Hu.
And the acquisitions of Hashem.
Right.
V'notain shikaro.
Scharo.
He gives him reward and he goes on.
Well, here scharo is like the rent. He gives him the rent. He gives him the rent payment, and he continues. Meaning the proper attitude that a person's supposed to have is that the land really belongs to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he really, therefore, he has to pay rent to Kadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, by giving his maestros, that's paying the rent. And therefore, he continues to have the right to use the land. Okay, that's clear.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's one explanation of how maestros are asayag la'osher, meaning it protects a person from becoming forgetful of his obligations to pay Kadosh Baruch Hu, to whom the real land belongs to and all the wealth of the land really belongs to.
I remember hearing a lecture where the rabbi explained one of the mechanisms that when a person gives Meiser, and he's talking in general about, giving tzedakah, a person gets used to the idea of giving away money when he goes into business and he needs to spend money on things in his business. It's
Right.
easier for him to do it because he's used to the idea of giving away money. So he doesn't tend to be so nervous about it, and he makes him a better businessman.
I'll tell you,
Very good. Okay.
I take issue with that because in my personal experience,
Of course you do.
I found that businessmen are usually the least likely to be generous with tzedakah.
Depends on the businessman, Barry.
Pardon me?
Well, it depends on the businessman. I know some businessmen who are tremendous belly tzedakah.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
too. I know. I'm saying, but in
So-
general, I'm not saying every single businessman is stingy, but I'm saying that in general, there seems to be a trend that people who are in business seem to be a little, less reluctant to give tzedakah. And this is what people who try to raise funds for yeshivas and schools and for widows and all that, they say that's seems to be a phenomenon. And also, interestingly enough, one of the other ones who, as far as professions, are doctors and lawyers. It seems to be that,
Well,
that's the
okay,
way it seems to be.
I know I'd be careful making any generalizations in any event. But in general, though, the more a person is appreciative of the general rule would be the more a person's appreciative of what a Kadosh Baruch has done for him, the easier it is for him to realize that he really on his own has very little.
Exactly.
The many times the people who are putting out the most efforts have, and that's what we just learned. There's the danger. The more a person puts out efforts, the greater is the danger that they feel that their efforts are what brought them
What
their,
did it? Yeah,
their success,
exactly.
right? But it's really the opposite. But so a person has to work against that. It's a very strong tendency, and the more a person puts forth in terms of his efforts, the more likely he's going to believe that his efforts were what was the cause of his success, and therefore it's harder. It's harder because he feels that what he has is really belonging to him.
Exactly. He worked for it. He was the smart one.
Yeah. So again, I wouldn't make any generalizations about any particular groups, but that's the general rule, and it can apply to any type of person in any trade or any profession, depending on who he was. And the only way to combat that is really to learn. Yeah, that's the Torah. The Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Yetzer Hara, and he created the Torah as a tablet, the remedy for the Yetzer Hara. The person learns and he feels and he understands the Kadosh Baruch Hu is the source of everything. And what he's doing is simply going through the motions, and he has to do it there's rules he has to obey in terms of what motions he has to go through. The Ramchal in Mesilas Yesharim says that basically the chiyuv of hishtadlus, that's what's referred to, the obligation to put forth efforts for a person to achieve various things, particularly not only in spiritual areas, but also and even perhaps even more so in the physical areas. This is a like a tax that a Kadosh Baruch Hu had placed upon humanity after the Chet of Adam Rishon, meaning before the Chet of Adam Rishon, really we were on a level that a Kadosh Baruch Hu simply wanted us to devote ourselves strictly to the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and without having the difficulties of making a living and supporting a person himself and his family, and other good causes as well. But that was all before the Chet of Adam Rishon. Once the Chet of Rishon occurred, so that was part of the what the Torah says before us. He's going to have to work now for his bread, right? So that was part of the rectification of the Chet, the sin that Adam Rishon did, and that was something which all of humanity has since inherited. So as the Mesilas Yesharim says, it's a klola, meaning the fact that a person has to work is really a klola. It shouldn't have to be that way, right? And so a person has to, and this is the general question that everyone really has to ask themselves, is exactly how much effort do they have to put forth in order to achieve their whatever, their financial success or their financial necessities. So that's the basic question everyone has to face and ask themselves. So by conferring, if a person has a Das Torah, someone who's familiar with the desires of the Kadosh Baruch Hu as codified in the Torah B'Ksav and is explained in the Torah B'Al Peh, so he can discuss his personal situation with a qualified Das Torah. That's what we had at the time of prophets. When we had prophets, we people in general have a misconception about prophets and prophecy, that we're familiar with all the prophets that are brought down in Tanakh, in the Torah, Ksubim and Nevi'im. But really, those prophets that were incorporated into what we know as Tanakh, those prophets are those prophets which spoke prophecies which were relevant to the general Klal Yisrael, not only in their own particular time and generation, but for all times and all generations. So those were special, unique prophets. But there were many, many more prophets than the prophets that there were spoken about and codified in Tanakh. And there were actually thousands and thousands of prophets. As a matter of fact, the Gemara makes a mention that during the time before the Churban Bayis Rishon, that there would be two prophets giving tochacha in the morning and two prophets giving tochacha in the evening to Klal Yisrael, prophesizing that there would be the Churban and there'd be exile. And this was going on for years and years and years. So in fact, there were many thousands and thousands of prophets. And the primary purpose, the goal and place of a prophet for the Jewish people was to really aid people through the medium of prophecy in terms of what they should be doing to serving the Kadosh Baruch Hu, how they should be living their lives in the best way that they can serve the Kadosh Baruch Hu and also meet their needs and sustain themselves and their families, and at the same time fulfill their purpose of being a true loyal servant of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the prophet would tell the person what he would have to do at any particular time or a circumstance that he would come to ask the prophet for his advice. So we don't have that Bisman Azeh, but we have Das Torah, we have Rosh Yeshivas, we have rabbis, and they're capable through the Siyat and the Shmaya that the Torah that they know and learn gives them, and they can guide a person to make the proper decisions in terms of what his actual chiyuv, what we call the chiyuv hishtadlus, the obligation of putting forth efforts to, in this particular case we're talking about here, sustain himself and his family. So, okay. I think it might be a good point to stop here.
Rabbi, hello. There's a Ma'amar Chazal about we just learned. The question that comes up: what's a big nisayon, ashiras or dollars? Being rich, or and most people say, "Oh, being poor is a big temptation, big nisayon." But the opposite is true. If you have too much money, then you forget that it comes from the bonus shalom. So that's why having too much money, you got to be careful. You have to do all the things that we just learned. Thank you.
Very good, very good.
Good
That's
work.
that's a
That's
very good.
chaos.
Thank you. Okay, Mitzvah Shem. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank
Bob,
you.
for that. Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Okay, Roy,
Okay.
we'll see you.
Roy, have
you
a good
tomorrow.
afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. We'll be taking a short break and we'll be continuing with the Mr. Brewery and Hilchas Nasias